This is the Snaky hips combo. I'll show it to you first standing forward so you can see what the hips and the arms are doing, and then I'll show you the turn on it. So the Snaky hips combo is a combination of a hip drop and the back half of an ami. It turns obviously, but I'm going to show it to you facing forward so we can get the hip work first. So the hip work starting on the right hip, we're going to do a comma drop. So you're dropping forward with the right hip, dropping back, dropping forward. From here, you're going to ami around the back half of your circle to bring your left hip forward, back, forward, ami around the back. You want this ami to be nice and contained. You don't want to put any strain in your lower back. And you're going to use your feet a little bit to help you get around. So once again, starting with the right hip, we're going drop, front, drop, back, drop, front, swing around, drop. Front with the left, front again, swing around, front, back, front, swing around, front, back, front, swing around. If you notice, my feet alternate from pointed toe on the right hip when the right hip is working. So you're working the unweighted hip. When my right hip is working, my left hip is taking the weight and it's flat. When I swing around the back of the ami, I switch from the toe of my right foot to the toe of my left foot. My right hip goes flat, becomes the weighted foot, and my left foot is now free as my left hip works. So play with that a little bit. Find how your feet help your hips around, and try as best you can to keep your feet directly underneath you and not allow them to swing out, which lets the hip move a bit more, but you'll find you move continuously backwards if you do this. So you want to keep the feet underneath you if you can. So let's show how the hands layer on top of this. Hands start here in relaxed position, our favorite position, and get a small scoop on the hip swing. So it's not really a floreo, it's a scoop behind the head, kind of like a kitty cat. You want to bring the hand back around your head, palm towards the back of your head, and up. It's nice and small, but fairly pronounced on the right and the left. So you want to drop the hip forward, back, forward, and the scoop happens as the hip swings around. Forward, back, forward, scoop. So your right arm goes when your right hip goes, your left arm goes when your left hip goes. So let's try putting that together a few times. With the right hip, forward, back, forward, swing around, forward, back, forward, swing around. Right hip, right hip, right hip, swing around. Left hip, left hip, left hip. One more time. We're drop, lift, drop, lift, drop, lift around. Drop, lift, drop, lift, drop, lift around. So this movement turns. I'll break down the turn for you. We start at noon. The first turn is going to be a quarter turn that takes us to the right. We end up facing to the right. Our left hip becomes the star. We do the drops on the left hip. The next turn is a half turn to the left, which brings us to face left. The third turn is a half turn to the right, which brings us to face forward. And the fourth turn is a half turn to the left, which brings us to face back. Clear as mud. Yes, let's try it again. The turn once again, starting at noon, quarter turn to the right, half turn to the left, quarter turn to the right, half turn to the left, and you actually end this move with your back to the audience. So just remember, you're starting forward, you're facing right, then left, front, then back. So let's try it in super slow-mo, all the pieces together. So here we go with the right hip. When you actually perform the combination, the very beginning, the right hip gets cheated a little. It just does the forward and then swings around, and then we establish the normal pattern. So starting with the right hip, as we use it in the choreography, you go right hip around. We've turned a quarter turn to the right. Now the left hip goes down, up, down, around. We're now facing the left. Right hip goes down, up, down, around. We're facing front. Left hip moves down, 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 around to the back. And 7/8 is just forward and back on the right hip. Then you're done. So one more time, and then we'll try it with music. A little faster, because it's a little faster with the music. So starting with the right hip, we go forward, around, left hip, left hip, around, right hip, right hip, right hip, around, left hip, around, right hip, right hip. Let's try it with some music. Starting here in relaxed position, 5, 6, 7, 8. Drop around, left hip, right hip, right hip, around, left, around, right. I know you totally got that, but let's try it again. On 5, 6, 7, 8. Right around, left around, right, around, left, around, right.